Please be seated.
អង្គជំរះប្រកាសបន្តកិច្ចដំណើរការនីតិវិធីសមនការនិង
The court is now back in session. The prosecutor, you may continue your question.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je voudrais simplement vous signaler.
Thank you, President. Before we get going, I just want to point out that I won't have finished by the end of today, and in agreement with the civil party lawyers, I will poach 15 minutes tomorrow morning on their time so as to complete my questions. Mr. Witness, earlier on you mentioned the fact that Pol Pot and other people from the Foreign Affairs Ministry had contacted you. Tell us how they contacted you. Did they call you on the phone, or how did they proceed?
At that time, well, I cannot recall it well, but I only learned it from Mr. Ieng Sari. Ieng Sari did not come to meet us on a daily basis, but normally we met him 2 or 3 times per week. I cannot recall it well, but Mr. Nikon, who was in charge of protocol office, he asked me to go.
Donc en réalité, Pol Pot.
So in reality, Pol Pot never personally and directly contacted you. Was it always through Ieng Sari or somebody else?
No, he never contacted me directly.
Merci.
Thank you. Mr. Witness, turning to another topic. During the Democratic Cambodia regime, did you notice disappearances in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of members of the ministry itself, or other people who had been temporarily sent there?
Yes, I did notice the disappearance of personnel.
De quel type de personnel?
What sort of personnel are you talking about? Were they different categories of people who were working in B1 who disappeared? For example, ambassadors, intellectuals, B1 cadres, or mere B1 combatants?
Those who disappeared from B1 included So Sai, alias Wine. He was the secretary of the party cell at the bureau section. And then she was appointed to the general politics department. Her name was Vine, but her full name I cannot recall. He came once and then disappeared. That was one of the examples. And in other section, for example, Kao, who was the head of civil aviation. At that time, civil aviation was subordinate to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and Cal was in charge of the civil aviation. He disappeared. But I did not know the reason for the disappearance. He might have been transferred to other position, or he may be taken away to somewhere else. I did not know. And there was another engineer. He also disappeared. He stayed in a house close to the Royal Palace. He came to work with Ministry of Foreign Affairs for a short period of time, and then he was transferred to Ministry of Industry, and then later on he disappeared. And Tunchut Thirin, who was another staff member of Ministry of Foreign Affairs, also disappeared. So to my knowledge, there were some personnel who disappeared within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but I did not know the reason for the disappearance, and nobody told me about it either. They disappeared mysteriously.
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Witness. I want to start with discussing the fate of a certain number of diplomats. Can you tell us, after the fall of Phnom Penh, who called the diplomats from the former regime back to the country?
Well, following the 17th of April 1975, diplomats who were on the mission overseas continued to work there. But the decision to call those diplomats back to the country was made in late 1975, and normally Pol Pot was the one who rendered that decision. It was not up to Ieng Sary to decide, but it was the leader of the country at the time to decide on calling back those diplomats.
Mr. Witness, you are talking about a Pol Pot decision once again. How do you know that Pol Pot took that decision? Who told you about that?
If Ieng Sary did not make that decision, who else could make that decision? It must have been Pol Pot. And the intellectuals who returned to the country had to go through the Democratic Cambodia diplomatic mission in China. So at that time, they took away their belongings, such as watches or other jewelries were removed from them and kept at the embassies in China. So the decision to remove those belongings from the intellectuals were not the decision of Ieng Sary. It was the one made by Pol Pot. For example, in the embassy, the ambassador was not the person who was vested with the power and authority. Normally, the secretary attached to the embassy who made the decision. This was reflected by my personal experience. It was not the ambassador who had the authority over the embassy, but it was the secretary attached to the embassy. Certain affairs, the minister did not were not even informed of the matters because the issue was referred back to the party center back in the country.
Justement, Monsieur.
Precisely. You say it wasn't a decision by Ieng Sary, therefore it had to be taken by Pol Pot. Did you personally participate in meetings of the Standing Committee?
I did not have any role to play in the meeting of the Central Committee meeting.
Et donc, est-ce que vous
So did the Standing Committee minutes get sent to you so that you could draw the difference between decisions that were maybe taken individually by Pol Pot or taken on a collective basis by the Standing Committee? Did you receive the minutes of the Standing Committee meetings, Mr. Witness?
Never had I received a copy of the minutes.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Witness. Among the former diplomats from before 17th of April 1975 who were called back before the end of 1975, can you give us one or two names of these diplomats and the postings they had at the time?
Mr. Saran Chak, who was the Minister of Foreign Affairs for the National United Front of Cambodia, Mr. San, the ambassador to Russia, Mr. Hut Sambat, the ambassador of Cambodia to Yugoslavia, Mr. Sukunti, the acting charge d'affaires to Ban Lung, His Royal Highness Prince Metivi, the charge d'affaires of the Cambodian embassies in Germany, and other diplomats. I cannot recall their name, and even to date I cannot recall of all of those diplomats who were posted overseas.
What about Nupek alias Sin? Is that a name that rings a bell among these lists of diplomats?
Yes, Nupek was the ambassador, a Cambodian ambassador to Charles at that time.
And what about Yen Sok Ban? Excuse my pronunciation. Was he a former Grunk chargé d'affaires?
Yes, Unsapon was the Unsokan's brother. Unsokan was the former student union in France, and then later on he was appointed the charge d'affaires of Cambodia to Albania.
Est-ce que parmi
Among all this group of former diplomats, how many went through the office of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs when they came back towards the end of 1975?
As a matter of fact, those diplomats who were called back to the country did not return through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. If I still remember correctly, Mr. Ieng Sari called me to meet with him in one of the houses in Phnom Penh, and actually those diplomats did not come through Ministry of Foreign Affairs, with the exception of Mr. Toi Kam Duen, who was the former president of the Students' Union in France, and he was also a party member and a former member of the Marxist-Leninist circle in France. He returned through Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And Mr. Saranchak and General Duong Samol, they returned through Ministry of Foreign Affairs for a certain period of time.
est-ce que c'était le ministère des
Was it the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that actually received these former ambassadors at Pochentong Airport?
That I did not know. I did not know who went to receive them at the airport. But what I knew was that I met them in one of the houses organized for them in Phnom Penh. And following the meeting with them, I did not know where those former diplomats sent to.
Quand vous les
And when you met them in a house in Phnom Penh, was that as part of your duties in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs?
At that time, I accompanied Mr. Ieng Sari and a few others Ministry of Foreign Affairs cadres, but I cannot recall who was who at that time.
Et à quel
And where did the meeting take place between Ieng Sari, yourself, and other cadres with these former diplomats?
I cannot recall the exact location because at that time I did not know Phnom Penh well, and it also took place a long time ago. I did not pay attention to it. To me, that particular meeting did not have any significance to me.
Est-ce que par la
Did you find out what actually what fate was meted out by the regime to these former diplomats like Chisan, Sukunti, Hutsambat, Nupek, Aliasin, Yingsupan, Siswat Mitoi? What happened to them?
នៅពេល
At that time, I did not know what happened to those diplomats because it was not within my responsibility and duties. But I learned about it later on in 1979.
Et peut-on
And might one be told what you did learn in 1979, Mr. Witness, about these people?
ការដឹងនេះ
I learned about it, but I did not have the full knowledge of their disappearance, and I cannot recall it clearly either. But I learned from one of the students whom I met later in France as well as in Cambodia, who had lived with those people, but as to when exactly they disappeared, I did not know.
Thank you, Mr. Witness. Mr. President, for the purposes of the transcript, I would like to mention the name of Nupek alias Sim and Jisam alias Chia are contained in document IS 5.70, which is a list of S21 prisoners. And in that document, it says that they transited through K17 Center. There's another document that contains the name of Insopan of the Foreign Ministry, which is D199/1425. That is an S21 execution list, which is entitled Names of Prisoners Executed in 1977, and concerning Hod Sambat, there is a document IS 531, which is his confession in S21. The same goes for ipso canti under code E366/7.1/983. That's the confession of Isukandi in S21. On the subject of Mr. Tuchkandun, Mr. Witness, you told us that he had belonged to the Marxist-Leninist circle. Were you a member with him of the Khmer Students' Union in Paris as well?
Yes, I was. I was a member of the Leninist Marxist circle in France with Mr. Toch Kham Duan. Following his tendering of a resignation from the president of the student union, then I became the president of the student union.
When he came back to Cambodia, did he work in B1? And if so, in which particular service?
Yes, upon return to Cambodia, he worked with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Qu'est-il arrivé?
What happened to Toch Kham Duan and his wife during the Democratic Kampuchea period?
ក គាត់ធ្វើការហើយផ្ទះគាត់នឹង
He worked with the ministry, and his house is close to mine, and my wife and his wife were close to each other, and his eldest sister was my
ធរជាកូនធរបាទថ្ងៃដែល
my adopted daughter too. So the day he left his house, I remember it vividly. It was in 1977. At that time, Ieng Seri went on official tour to Malaysia and Singapore with Mr. Chun Prasad. When he left, his wife was very happy at that time because she thought that he would go to the countryside, because during the Democratic Cambodia period, intellectuals who returned from overseas and attached to the base or to the countryside, it brought honors to the family. So to refashion himself in the countryside. So they were very happy because they thought that he would be asked to teach English in the countryside. And I learned about his arrest only later on.
So if I understand correctly, you didn't witness the arrest because you thought that the Tochkarndun husband and wife were going out to the countryside. But when they left B1, because you were neighbours, did you see who took them away? Who conveyed them to the countryside?
I did not witness it, but I saw him preparing his clothes, preparing for his trip. That's how I saw, but I did not see who came to fetch him.
And did Ieng Seri speak to you about the arrest of Mr. Tochkarndun?
As I recall, during a meeting, he read the confession of Tochkarndun. Let me summarize the content of the confession as to the reasons for the arrest of Tochkarndun. Tochkarndun was assigned from his other brother, Tochpun, who was then Minister of Public Works of Democratic Cambodia. Tochpun during the regime under the control of Marshal Lonal, that is between 1970 to 75, he was a secret linked, infiltrated in Phnom Penh. Later on, that secret network, including those who were responsible for the link, named Sok, were accused as being leaders of Democratic Cambodia. That they were linked as a part of the espionage network of the CIA. So they were all arrested, including Tochpun. And through that confession, it was shown that Tochpun assigned Tochkarndun to write about the situation occurring in Democratic Cambodia. And Tochkarndun wrote the articles translated into a foreign language and sent overseas by his wife Tochvanna, who was then working at the protocol section, who had the privilege to contact with other diplomatic missions in Cambodia. And one of the embassies did send the document, or that document, to Egypt. That was how it was shown in the confession, and it seems to be rather logical and credible. It was like a novel with different players, and it seems that it was plausible to believe that it did happen. So Tôi Kham Duen was the one who wrote the article and sent it to a CIA network outside through the Egyptian diplomatic mission in Cambodia.
Thank you. As for the purposes of the record, I heard Tok Kham Duen, but Tok Duen, I understand that Toch Kham Duen and Toch Pun are brothers, and I'm saying this on the basis of what I heard from the French channel. So, witness, you said that Ieng Sary read to you Toch Kham Duen's confessions during a meeting. When did this meeting take place with Ieng Sary, and who attended that meeting?
I cannot recall the exact date of the meeting. Present there, as I recall, I could not recall all the participants, I rather say so. However, I believed it was in 1977. Usually the attendees were those cadres who worked within my sections, that is within the diplomatic affairs section. They were also close friends of Tôi Kham Duen, including Chun Prasad, Kit Chon, Aung Sokun, etc.
And during this meeting, did Ieng Sary find the accusation of betrayal described in the confession very clear?
I could not make a conclusion regarding this matter, but I can say that Ieng Sary was close to Tôi Kham Duen, and I knew that fact clearly. And when people came to arrest Tôi Kham Duen, it was the time that Ieng Sary was not present, was not in. If I am certain, if he were to be in the country, that the arrest would not have been made.
And do you mean that since he knew Toch Kham Duen since the time in France, that this was someone who was close to him, someone he would have protected?
It can be said so, because Ieng Sary defended a large number of cadres at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And not because of their close proximity to him, I'd like to say that the confession was like a novel or a writing up of a story. While I was in Beijing, I was also an agent for KGB, that is in the confession, and that I gathered the information for the Soviet Union. But in Phnom Penh, I instead worked for the CIA in a group of a group of people known as S808, and that we had a weekly meeting at the Chun Prasad office, and the five include the Chun Prasad, myself, Kitchon, Tôi Kham Dươn, and Hat Sien Lai Ni. And this Hat Sien Lai Ni was not a CIA agent because he was the president of the Khmer Communists in the Soviet Union. It means he was a pro the Soviet Union. So we can deduce that the confession was actually just a writing of a novel, and that it could not be believed in, and that was clear to me.
Earlier on, you said that what had been told to you seemed credible, but must I understand that the accusation of certain number of cadres at B1, including yourself, Chunpasit and Ketchun, were not credible? Is that what I must understand?
Yes. When it is clearly shown that people were CIA agents, that they would be arrested. But if all were to be arrested, it means the ministry would have been closed. It could not be functioning without us. It seems that it's too extreme.
Thank you. Generally speaking, in democratic Kampuchea, what would happen if you were incriminated in documents, and how many incriminations were necessary for there to be consequences?
Let me respond that not only that someone was fabricated or complicated, but that should be documents. For example, in early 1976 or 77, if there were 3 documents, for example, if I had a friend at the Ministry of Public Works, and in the evening, when there was a small party and I was invited to attend, and of course I would attend it. And as we know, Tôi Phương was the Minister of Public Works, then we would be able to get something to eat, maybe chicken feet. In 1976, everybody had gruel. So for me, no problem to eat gruel at that time because I had some bowel problem. So later on, if one of the meeting attendees was arrested, and if we were to attend that kind of party, it means I would have a story of 1 document. So if I were to attend 3 times, it means I would have 3 documents or 3 cases against me. And Kitchon himself invited me on several occasions, but I refused because I had my stomach problem. And as for him, he had more than 60 documents or 60 cases against him. And if someone were to have 3 documents or 3 cases against him, that the person will be arrested. But in this case, it's too excessive, more than 60 cases. But in my case, first I had 3 cases of 3 documents against me, but later on they added 2 more. But how come I was spared? Because among the 3 or 4 documents I was accused of being a revisionist. That means pro the Soviet Union or pro Vietnam. So I was labeled as a revisionist. So I was marked as a revisionist in 4 documents, and I was half accused in another document, as Hein Pich said that all intellectuals arriving from France were all revisionists, but he failed to mention any particular individuals. So my name was not mentioned. So in this case, it would not say that I had a 1 full document or 1 case against me. It was only half. So in that case, I only had 4.5 cases or 4.5 documents against me, so I could not be arrested. But I can also say at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I was the one who had the least documents or cases against me. And I think on one website they said that I was the one to replace Pol Pot. And maybe after I leave this courtroom, maybe I will be labeled differently again, maybe by the Radio Free Asia broadcast. So this is just want to shed the light regarding the documents or cases against someone. And by 1978, the document or the cases against to 8 points. And by that time, there was no distinction between old people or new people. So it was Madame Ingtedet who came up with the 8 documents or 8 cases as she talked to Pol Pot. But Ieng Sary did not dare to say so, but it was Madame Ingtedet, who was the in-law, who dared to speak about that to Pol Pot. But later on, Pol Pot married another wife, and there was a different story. But by that time, it came up, or it increased to 8 documents or 8 cases against someone before that person was arrested. But in the case, for example, the accuser did not face-to-face with the one who is accused. And that is a problem. And when I went to visit the Tulsai Museum, I saw a number of my friends who were loyal, who were doctors, who were good people, but were taken and killed there. That was really a pity. My apology to the brothers. If I knew that was the result, I would not have joined the group. Because I myself, I reached a point of no return, that I would not bear it any longer. That was not a revolution. That's not meant to serve the people or to the country. I really feel the pain. And Mr. President, when I see the brothers or Bong Bong who spent almost their entire lives on this path, I knew them very well. When it comes to the religion, about the three bodies, in Khmer we say Preh Put, Preh Tho, Preh Song. But the other truths are gone. Only the one bodies are here, representing by those Bong Bong brothers.
Thank you, witness. May I ask you to be a little bit more concise in your answers to my questions? I know that you have a lot to say, but just for clarification, you spoke about the 3 loyal friends and 3 faithful friends, and you mentioned their names in your statements. Was this Chief Chiling, In Sopan, and In Chamrun?
Hin Chamraun was an engineer in the public works from France. The President, Mr. Prosecutor, could you clearly state the names? Because it's Hin, not Sun. So please make your question clearly so that the witness can respond and try to avoid any misunderstanding.
Yes, thank you. This is document D147, also E3/101, and on page 4 in Khmer 00290437, English 00290443, and I might quote the passage in question and ask you to provide me with, if you can please give the statement to the witness so that he may see the names in Khmer. So it is 00290437 in Khmer. And if we could please display this excerpt as well.
The President, yes, you may proceed. Court officer, could you deliver the document for the witness examination?
Alors,
so this is an excerpt referring to the return of the intellectuals. And let me read the passage in full, including the question. So here mention is made of the intellectuals. What was the method used to have them returned? That was the question. The answer I remember that in September 1975, when a delegation of which I was part traveled to the UN, we stopped in Paris for a meeting, and a meeting was organized to convince intellectuals to come back. Some of my friends were present who were considered progressive intellectuals, such as Chiev Chin Liang, In Sopan, and Hin Chamrun. They returned to Cambodia, and all disappeared subsequently. I discovered their names at Tu Sleng 2 years ago, and I was deeply moved. I then started to write the story of these persons, and this was the deeper reason behind my decision to collaborate with the tribunal. So what I wanted to know is whether these are the 3 people you mentioned.
Yes. When I talked about the names at those lines, they were additional names. They were my friends whom I acquainted and knew during my study at the Presiano school in Kampong Cham. And the 2 were brothers, and they were of Laotian nationality, and they resided in Batsay. At that time, the Laos students in Batsay, that is south of Laos, came to study. And at that time, there was no high school or college, and they came to study in Kampong Cham. And I saw other 5 to 6 names, which really shocked me. And they were additionals to these 3 names. Tiêu Chin Lane was the former head of the Kampong Sao port in the current Sihanoukville. During the Sangkumrih Niyom, he went to France, and his wife was French. He had a child, and he had to sacrifice leaving the family behind in order to come to contribute to the country. He was a close friend of Ieng Sari. As for En Sopan, he was an engineer from the L'École Centrale in Paris. He was the blood brother of En Sokan. As for Hen Chamran, the President, the prosecutor, you may continue your question.
I see that mention of these names is quite emotional for the witness, so I would like to move on to something else. Earlier, we spoke about the number of documents that was necessary to be arrested, and you spoke about Tush Dom Dung's confessions. And when you speak about these documents, are these accusations in confessions of people who had been arrested prior?
Yes.
Vous avez parlé.
And you also spoke about that you had been incriminated in certain documents and that this had happened 4.5 times. How did you learn of all of this? Did you manage to gain access to the confessions in which you were mentioned?
No, I did not see it. I knew it because on that day, as I recall, it was in 1977, but I cannot recall the month. Ieng Sari called me through his office at the MFA, and he said that in the confession of Ruh Saran, who was the director of the Royal Air Cambodia of the Cambodian Aviation, and was also my friend from the Sisawat school. He was also a friend of Kiet Chon. In his confession, as he was accused of being the CIA head, he said, Kiet Chon and I were also CIA agents. And for that reason, Ieng Sari called me to his office to clarify the matter. And I'd like to also add that there were a lot of favorable circumstances for me. I also recall that in 1971, as I had to go to Algeria with Jan Duran for a conference meeting in the capacity as the representative of the front, and the conference was for the free press of the communist movement, and I transited through Paris. At that time, Mr. Rusaran was representative of Marshal Lunol, because by 1971 the coup d'etat to topple Prince Sihanouk already concluded.
President.
Yes, you may proceed, the prosecutor. And Mr. Witness, please listen to the question carefully and limit your response to the content of the question. And please try to make your response short and precise and respondent to the question put to you.
Thank you, President. Sorry for interrupting you, witness. We, of course, understood that you had been incriminated, but that you had not been arrested. But concretely speaking, after the meeting with Ieng Sary, did Ieng Sary ask you to do anything specific following Huk Sarin's accusations in his confession?
He asked me to write my biography in the Khmer language, which I have seen just then. And that document has been copied by the Documentation Center of Cambodia. That was the biography that he asked me to write.
Thank you. Last question, President, before we adjourn soon. In this biography, indexed D154.3, you said, or you took great care, and I believe this confession dates back to June 1977, you took great care in this biography to characterize a certain number of people as traitors or as despicable. And in English it's translated as contemptible, in fact. And I'm going to mention all of the people referred to in this biography whose names are preceded by these characterizations. There's Huk Sarin, Huk Sarin on the Khmer page 00003478, English 00816730, French 00290760. And you mentioned many other names aside Huk Sarin, Singh Savat, for example, and spelled out S-A-I-N-G. There's Comret, K-A-O-M, Hoot Niem, Hak Seng Ling Mi, whom you mentioned previously, Keo Mias, and you indicated Sok Tun Pala, Toch Pun, and Toch Kam Dun, who you already mentioned previously. And I can provide the ER numbers if necessary, but I'm not sure that is the case. So when you wrote out this biography upon Ieng Sary's request, was it normal for you to use such terms as contemptible, maybe to take distance in relation to all of these incriminated people?
Those individuals were announced by the party as CIA agents, and they betrayed the organization. As such, it had to be stated so, believe it or not, that what was to be done. I do not know the fact that by putting such an allegations or names that I would be labeled as the opportunist.
អាហ្នឹងជាធម្មតា
However, if I were not to write down those names, what would be the consequence? That's what we call the Khmer democracy. Let me just tell you that was the democratic way according to the Cambodians. If it's a Khmer sour soup, it's a Khmer sour soup. Don't change it. We cannot say everything was good in France, in the United States, or other countries. The President, thank you. The proceeding today has come to a conclusion. We shall adjourn today's proceeding now, and we will continue tomorrow, starting from 9 a.m. And tomorrow, the chamber will continue hearing the testimony of the witness Sung Si Kun, who will be questioned again by the prosecution and by the lead co-lawyers for civil parties. This is information for the parties and the public. Mr. Sung Si Kun, the hearing of your testimony has not yet concluded, and you are invited again to come tomorrow. Likewise, the UT Council, you are required to be present tomorrow as well. Court officer, in collaboration with the visual unit, assists the witness to return to his residence and have him return to the office tomorrow prior to 9 a.m. Security guards, you are instructed to take the three accused back to the detention facility and have them return tomorrow morning before 9 a.m. The court is now adjourned.